Just a movie star, he was a dad to 6 kids. He had 3 children with his first wife, Jackie White, and 3 daughters with his second wife, Oscar-winning actress Joanne Woodward. Newman's family life spanned Hollywood's golden age through the 2000s, but his children mostly grew up outside of their father's limelight. Some tried acting, others avoided it completely. They faced immense pressure carrying the Newman name, and even tragedy that no family should endure. In this video, we'll explore each of Paul Newman's children: Scott, Stephanie, Susan, Nell, Melissa, and Claire, also known as Clea, and see where life has taken them. Get ready for a story of fame, family, heartbreak, and hope, told like a friend sharing a remarkable family tale over coffee. Number 6. Scott Newman. Paul Newman's eldest child and only son was Alan Scott Newman, born September 23, 1950. Scott was the firstborn from Paul's marriage to Jackie White. Imagine being the only son of a Hollywood icon. That's a lot to live up to. By age 8, Scott's parents had divorced, and Paul had married Joanne Woodward, meaning Scott's childhood was split between a normal life with his mom and visits to his now famous dad. As a young man, Scott struggled to find his place. He dropped out of college in the 1960s to chase a career in entertainment, but he was determined to earn success on his own terms. In fact, he even changed his name to William Scott for a time to avoid trading on the Newman fame. He tried everything: acting, singing, even working as a stuntman, searching for his niche. Scott landed a few small film roles. You can spot him in disaster epic The Towering Inferno, 1974, and the Robert Redford film The Great Waldo Pepper, 1975, where he played a character named Duke. These were minor parts, but for Scott, they were steps out of his father's long shadow. Yet, behind the scenes, Scott was fighting deeper troubles. He had a wild streak and developed a tendency to drink heavily. In 1978, at just 28 years old, Scott Newman died tragically from an accidental overdose of alcohol and painkillers. It happened after a motorcycle accident. He was taking pain meds for his injuries, mixed them with alcohol, and that lethal combination cost him his life. The news devastated Paul Newman and the entire family. Paul, known for his cool demeanor on screen, was absolutely shattered by the loss of his only son. Years later, Paul confided his pain to his close friend, A.E. Hawkner, saying, "There's nothing you can say that will repair my guilt about Scott. It will be with me as long as I live." That raw guilt shows how deeply Paul felt he had failed Scott, even if it wasn't truly his fault. To channel his grief into something positive, Paul Newman created the Scott Newman Center in 1980, a foundation to educate youth about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. He poured $1 million of his own money into it, determined to spare other families the heartbreak his family experienced. For decades, the Scott Newman Center carried out that mission, a living tribute to Scott's memory. It eventually closed in 2013 when funding ran dry, but not before helping countless kids. Number 5. Stephanie Newman. Paul Newman's second child, Stephanie Newman, was born in 1951, just a year after Scott. Unlike her brother, Stephanie chose a very private path. In fact, of all the Newman children, Stephanie is the most mysterious to the public. As a little girl in the 1950s, she occasionally appeared alongside her dad at events or in family photos. But as she grew up, Stephanie quietly stepped away from the spotlight. While her siblings dabbled in Hollywood or public causes, Stephanie leads a quiet life away from the family business, according to Vanity Fair. She has no acting credits, no high-profile career in the media, and virtually no public presence. And that seems to be exactly how she wants it. Not much is publicly known about Stephanie's adult life, whether she pursued a different career, married, or has children, because she's intentionally kept those details out of headlines. Number 4. Susan Kendall Newman. Next is Susan Kendall Newman. Born in February 1953, the youngest of Paul's first 3 children, with Jackie White. Susan was just a toddler when her father's acting career took off. After her parents' divorce, Susan, like her sister Stephanie, grew up mostly out of Hollywood's glare, but she eventually found her own ways to step into the public arena. In the 1970s, Susan tried her hand at acting. If you look really closely, you can catch a young Susan Newman in an uncredited role in her dad's 1977 hockey comedy, Slapshot. Imagine acting in a scene with Paul Newman as just another extra. Talk about pressure. She also nabbed a few roles in 1978. In the Beatles-themed film I Want to Hold Your Hand and Robert Altman's ensemble comedy, A Wedding. Unlike her father, though, Susan didn't fall in love with life on the silver screen. By the 1980s, she walked away from acting and found her true calling behind the scenes and in nonprofit work. Susan became a producer and media executive for charitable organizations, using her storytelling skills to support causes she cared about. In fact, she served as executive director for several nonprofits, notably those focusing on substance abuse, prevention, and child welfare. It's hard not to see the personal motivation there. After losing her brother Scott to addiction, Susan dedicated years to educating others about alcohol and drug abuse, hoping to save other families from that tragedy. She traveled the world lecturing on family and children's issues, channeling the Newman passion for helping others. Susan has also been fiercely protective of her father's legacy. She isn't afraid to speak her mind, even if it ruffles feathers. In 2015, Susan made headlines for publicly calling out the man running Newman's own foundation, Bob Forrester. At the time, Forrester was in charge of Paul's famous charity food company, and Susan felt he was mismanaging it. "I feel like the Newman family has been taken hostage by Bob Forrester," she told Vanity Fair, accusing him of forgetting that he was supposed to carry out Paul's wishes, not his own. Those are strong words. She went on to say, her father would never support many of the things Forrester is doing. Not surprisingly, the foundation's leadership denied her claims and said she was wrong. This public dispute showed Susan's willingness to stand up for what she believes her father wanted, even if it meant airing dirty laundry. It wasn't an isolated incident either. Today, Susan Kendall Newman is in her 70s and is known as a former actress and award-winning TV producer who continues working with nonprofits. She's also reportedly active in church and community initiatives in California. Number 3. Nell Newman, Eleanor Nell. Newman was the first child born to Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, a Hollywood power couple if ever there was one. Nell came into the world on April 8, 1959, and unlike her older half-siblings, she grew up with both parents in the spotlight. Paul and Joanne were deeply in love. They famously remained married for 50 years, and they raised Nell and her 2 younger sisters in a relatively down-to-earth way in Connecticut, far from Hollywood. Still, showbiz found Nell early. As a child, she did a bit of acting under the stage name Nell Potts. In fact, she acted in at least 2 movies her parents made. She played a young version of Joanne Woodward's character in Rachel, 1968, and appeared alongside her mother in The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds, 1972. Both films directed by Paul Newman himself. Little Nell was literally on screen with Mom, and directed by Dad. However, that early brush with fame didn't turn into a lifelong acting career. As Nell grew up, she stepped away from acting and found her passion elsewhere, the environment. In the early 1990s, Nell Newman made a name for herself, not in Hollywood, but in business and environmental advocacy. She had a bold idea. Why not extend her dad's charitable food company, Newman's Own, into the growing organic foods movement? In 1993, Nell co-founded Newman's Own Organics, an all-organic line of products that range from organic snacks to pet food. She was following in Paul's footsteps by blending entrepreneurship with charity, just like Newman's Own, famous for its salad dressing, gives all profits to charity. Nell wanted organics to reflect those values while promoting sustainable agriculture. Newman's Own Organics, with Nell as president, became a successful venture and a pioneering brand in organic foods. However, things got complicated after Paul Newman's death in 2008. Paul had structured Newman's Own such that it would continue as a charitable foundation. As part of that, Nell's Organics division had to operate under certain agreements. By 2014, Nell's licensing agreement to use her father's name and image expired, meaning Newman's Own Inc., the main company, could essentially take back control. Tensions arose. Nell found that her company was blocked from launching new products because they might compete with Newman's Own's products. Ultimately, rather than see her employees and business suffer, Nell made a painful decision. In 2014, she turned Newman's Own Organics over to Newman's Own Inc., effectively giving up the company she built. It must have been hard, her own father's legacy business squeezing out her offshoot. But Nell chose to protect her team and the principles over pride. After stepping away from organics, Nell continued her commitment to causes she cares about. In 2010, she had already established the Nell Newman Foundation, which focuses on environmental conservation, sustainable agriculture, and other philanthropic work. Through her foundation, she carries on her father's legacy of charitable giving, but with her own twist centered on the planet's health. In her personal life, Nell has been happily married to Gary Irving since 2005, and largely keeps a low profile. She's known to be somewhat media shy compared to, say, Susan or Clea. Still, Nell made news when she joined Susan in speaking out against how Newman's Own Foundation was being run. She too felt the family's influence on the charity was being pushed aside. In 2022, Nell and Susan together filed a lawsuit against Newman's Own Foundation, accusing it of straying from its mission to preserve and honor Paul Newman's legacy and disregarding Paul's explicit wishes. The suit claimed that in recent years, the foundation's leaders had shown a pattern of disregard for Paul's directives, engaging in mismanagement, scandal, and questionable practices. For example, they alleged that the foundation cut in half the charitable contributions that Paul's daughters could direct to causes, from $400,000 to $200,000 each per year, contrary to Paul's plans. The foundation defended itself, calling the lawsuit meritless and saying that it must follow best practices rather than give the family perpetual special funding. Today, at 66 years old, Nell Newman is respected as a green businesswoman and philanthropist. She took the Newman passion for giving and extended it to giving back to the earth. Number 2, Melissa Lissy Newman. Melissa Stewart Newman, born September 27, 1961, is Paul and Joanne's middle daughter, though the family calls her Lissy. Growing up in the 1960s and 70s with parents who were Hollywood royalty, Melissa had an upbringing full of interesting contrasts. One day, she might be visiting her dad on a film set, and the next, she's doing chores on the family farm in Connecticut. Melissa inherited a bit of the acting bug from her parents, but she approached it in a careful way. In her teens and 20s, she dabbled in acting. She appeared on episodes of TV shows like Hawkins, a 1973 series where her dad had starred, and The New Perry Mason, and she even had small roles in a few films. If you watch Mr. and Mrs. Bridge 1990, a film starring Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward as a married couple, you can spot Melissa in a bit part. It was like a small family collaboration. She also appeared as a child in Sometimes a Great Notion, 1971, and a TV movie, See How She Runs, 1978, both projects involving her parents. So, yes, Melissa gave acting a try, but ultimately she didn't chase stardom. By the 1980s, Melissa pivoted away from Hollywood and followed a more personal path. She has a love for the arts, not just acting, but also singing. She's known to have a lovely singing voice and occasionally performs jazz music at local venues. However, Melissa largely stayed out of the spotlight and centered her life around family and community. In November 1995, she married Raphael Rafi Elkind, a teacher, in a small private ceremony. Together they settled in Connecticut, not far from her parents' home in Westport, and had 2 sons, Peter and Henry. Becoming a mother seemed to fulfill Melissa in ways the Hollywood life never could. She also devoted time to giving back, a trait all Newman share. It's reported that Melissa volunteers at a women's prison in Connecticut, helping incarcerated women, which shows her compassionate spirit. Imagine being one of those women and realizing the kind volunteer who comes to help is Paul Newman's daughter. By all accounts, Melissa is humble and down to earth. She has described her life as pretty ordinary, raising her kids, gardening, singing in the church choir, far from the red carpets and flashbulbs her parents knew, but Melissa hasn't completely left her parents' legacy behind. In 2023, she undertook a heartfelt project, compiling a book of letters, photographs, and memories documenting Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward's epic love story. The book, titled Head Over Heels, Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman, A Love Affair in Words and Pictures, is full of rare snapshots and personal notes, giving fans an intimate look at her mom and dad's 50-year romance. Melissa poured through boxes of old family photos and letters to create this tribute, published in late 2023, around the time of what would have been her father's 98th birthday. For Melissa, who was always a bit more removed from Hollywood, this project was a labor of love, a way to preserve her family's history and share the beautiful side of her parents' lives with the world. Number 1. Claire Olivia Newman. Last but not least is Claire Olivia Newman, better known by her nickname, Clea. Born in April 1965, Clea is Paul and Joanne's youngest daughter, the baby of the family. If Paul Newman was a legend to us, to Clea, he was just Dad, albeit a dad who might have been off filming a blockbuster or racing cars on the weekend. Clea was only in her early 40s when Paul passed away in 2008. And over the years, she has taken on a special role as a sort of guardian of her parents' legacy. First, let's talk about Clea's own career. Clea didn't go into acting, perhaps having seen her older sisters try it out. Instead, she found her passion on the other side of film and television production. She built a solid behind-the-scenes career in Hollywood as a production consultant and producer. Clea has worked on some high-profile TV projects. She was a production consultant for HBO's hit series Big Little Lies, and she did post-production work on acclaimed shows like Mad Men and The Big C. She even served as an associate producer on the haunting thriller miniseries Sharp Objects 2018, and a co-producer on Penny Dreadful, City of Angels 2020. If you didn't know her last name, you just think she's a skilled producer, making her mark in television. By keeping a low profile in the industry, Clea earned respect in her own right, rather than as Newman's kid. In her personal life, Clea married Kurt Soderlund, who was involved in charitable work related to clean water, though Clea tends to keep her family life private. Like her sisters, she grew up mostly in Connecticut and has long been involved in the local community of Westport, where the Newmans made their home. In fact, one of the strongest qualities all the Newman Woodward kids share is a dedication to philanthropy, and Clea is no exception. From a very young age, our parents taught us that being a good citizen in your community and giving back should be a priority if you were as lucky as we were, Clea has said. That lesson clearly stuck. Clea has devoted much of her adult life to charitable causes, especially those started by her father. She's been actively involved with Serious Fun Children's Network, the global family of summer camps for kids with serious illnesses that Paul Newman founded. The first camp was the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp in Connecticut. In fact, Clea is an ambassador for serious fun and has effectively taken up the mantle as a public face of the organization. Picture this. It's 1988, and Paul Newman opens a summer camp where kids with cancer or other illnesses can kick back and raise a little hell, as he put it. Little Clea, then a 23-year-old, volunteers at that camp at her dad's urging, and it changes her life. That's exactly what happened. Clea credits her father with nudging her toward charity work. She says she went in as a naive young woman and came out of that camp experience a different person. Today, Serious Fun has provided over 2 million camp experiences to sick kids around the world, completely free of charge, and Clea has been a driving force behind the scenes, rallying volunteers and donations. It's become, as she says, part of Paul's persona and now part of hers. For Paul Newman's 100th birthday in 2025, Clea declared it the year of Serious Fun, honoring his legacy by expanding the camps and their reach. She even wrote a piece in People magazine expressing how proud she is to carry on that work and how her dad trusted her with it. Emotionally, Clea has described her father as a big kid at heart, someone who, even in his 80s, would drop everything to support her interests. She remembers him sitting through horse shows despite being allergic, just to be there for her. Being the youngest, Clea had a very special bond with Paul in his later years. Before he died, Paul gave Clea and her sisters a clear charge. Please take care of Mom and take care of the camps. Those were his two great loves outside of acting, his wife Joanne and the camp program for kids. Clea took that to heart. Joanne Woodward, now in her 90s, has battled Alzheimer's in recent years, and the daughters, especially Clea, who lives nearest, have been by her side. And as we've seen, Clea took care of the camps, helping lead Serious Fun forward.